Topic 8, which is about the acid, base and salt, and it is divided into subtopics. 8.1, which is about the characteristic or the properties of acid and base. 8.2, the characteristic or types of oxide. 8.3, how we can prepare different types of salts, and 8.4 is identification of the ions, how we can identify different types of ions. So let's start with the first topic, which is about the characteristic properties of acid and base. These are the learning objective. So describing the characteristic properties of acid. What are the characteristic properties of acid? Number one, whenever any acid react with metal, it will give salt. When acid react with base, it will give salt and water. And whenever acid react with metal carbonate, it will give salt, water, and carbon dioxide. So whenever you have acid, whenever any acid reacted with metal, what will be the result for acid plus metal? So this will result in a formation of salt and hydrogen. So any acid is there, if it is reacting with metal, that will result in a formation of salt and hydrogen. The second one, if an acid react with metal oxide, the product will be salt plus water. And the third one, when acid is reacting with metal hydroxide, so that will result in a formation of salt and water. Plus, if it is higher carbonate, acid plus metal carbonate, so whenever any acid react with metal carbonate, the result will be salt, water, and carbon dioxide. So these are the characteristic properties of acid. Whenever any acid is there mixed with metal, it will give salt and hydrogen. When any acid is there mixed with metal oxide, it will give salt and water. Acid is there mixed with metal hydroxide, it will give salt and water as well. And acid is there react with metal carbonate, this will result in a formation of salt, water, and carbon dioxide. So these are the characteristic of acid. Whenever acid react, this will lead one of the product depending on what we add. If we add metal, metal oxide, metal carbonate, or metal hydroxide. But how we define the term acid? What is the definition of acid? So what is the basic definition of acid? Acids are proton donors. So acids are proton donors. The substance which give proton, proton means H plus ion. So the substance which give proton or H plus ion, we call that as acid. So all the acids are proton donors. Example, you have HCl. It mixed with water, H2O. As a result, what we see when this reaction occurs, this will become Cl minus and H3O plus. So chloride ion is produced and oxonium ion is also produced. Now we want to identify which substance is acid. So whenever we want to identify the substance which is acid, we will apply this definition. What is the definition of acid? Acids are proton donors, means they will donate or they will give H plus ion or give hydrogen ion. So when you check, first it is HCl, then it becomes Cl. So HCl becomes Cl. It donate proton or accept proton. Initially it was HCl that turned into Cl. So what happened as HCl turned into Cl? Does it donate proton or accept proton? So it donate proton, and whenever a substance donate proton, donate hydrogen ion, what we call that substance, we call that as acid. So in this example, HCl is an acid. So a substance which donate proton or give proton, we call that as acid. This is a basic definition of acid. So acids are proton donors. Is it clear? Another example I will give. Is it clear, the first example for acid? Then another example, if you have, say, a reaction that HNO3 mixed with H2O, as a result it produces NO3 and H2O, H3O plus. So when we check, identify the substance which is acid, so HNO3 is there, changes it to NO3. So what happened to HNO3 changed to NO3? Does it donate proton or accept proton? HNO3 become NO3 minus. So it also donate proton. So whenever a substance donate proton, what we call that substance? We call that substance as acid. So acids are proton donors. The substance that give proton, we simply call that as acid. Another example, you have H2SO4. So in this example, as you can see, first it is HNO3 and then it become NO3. So when we check what happened, does it donate proton or does it accept proton? So when we check, first it was having H, but after that H is being removed. H is removed or H is decreased. So whenever a substance give proton, the number of hydrogen will decrease, and the substance which is donating a proton, that substance is known as acid. So the term acid means proton donors. Another example, you have H2SO4 plus H2O. When it react, it turn into HSO4 minus and H3O plus. We want to identify in the question which one is an acid. So how to identify which substance is acid? So we have to check the substance before and after the reaction. Before the reaction, it was having 2 hydrogen. After the reaction, it is having 1 hydrogen. So what is this substance? Acid, or is this the acid? So to apply the definition of acid, what is the definition of acid? Acids are proton donors. A substance that give proton or donate proton, we call that substance as acid. So first it was having 2 hydrogens. As you can see, H2SO4. was having two hydrogen, then HSO4 means it is having only one hydrogen. So the number of the hydrogen decreased, or it donated the proton, or it gave the proton. So what we call that substance, if the number of so acid, it is donating proton. Why we are using a term proton for hydrogen ion? Because there is another name for hydrogen ion which is also known as a proton. As the structure of the hydrogen contain one proton and one electron only. So inside the nucleus there is one proton, and around the nucleus there is one electron. If hydrogen plus charge is there, hydrogen plus charge means it loses electron, because when it loses electron it will form a plus charge. So what will be the structure of hydrogen plus charge? So hydrogen plus charge will have only proton and there will be no electron. That is why another name for hydrogen plus charge is proton. So we also say this as a proton. Instead of saying hydrogen ion, we call that as a proton, because in hydrogen atom there is one proton and one electron, but in hydrogen plus charge there is no electron, only proton is there. That's why we call acids are hydrogen plus ion donors, or acid are proton donors. Is it clear? This term proton or H plus is the same thing, because hydrogen atom contain one proton, one electron, whereas hydrogen ion plus ion contain only proton. That's why we call acids are proton donors, or acid are H plus ion donors. Is it clear? The example of acid, the definition. So different types of acids are there, but few specific acids you should learn their name. HCl, HNO3, the formulas as well. H2SO4, H3PO4, and CH3COOH. So HCl, that is known as hydrochloric acid. HNO3, that is known as nitric acid. H2SO4 is known as sulfuric acid. H3PO4 is known as phosphoric acid. And CH3COH is known as ethanoic acid. So these are different types of acids. You have to remember, memorize the name. And it is easy to identify a substance is acid or no. How to identify whether a substance is acid? If the starting is HCl, acid, HNO3, acid, hydrogen is a starting, H2SO4, H3PO4, and in this case these are called organic acid. If for organic acid hydrogen is there at the last, so if hydrogen is there at the start or hydrogen is there at the end, you can identify that as acid. So a simple technique is there to identify whether a substance is acid. If the compound, the chemical symbol, if it's starting with H or it is ending at H, we call that as acid. Is it clear? So example, different examples I will write. Say HNO3, is it acid? Yes or no? The question is identify the acid. Yeah, HNO3 is an acid. Then example, the second one we have NaCl. Is it an acid? Is this an acid? No, it's not an acid because you don't see hydrogen at the beginning. Then the third one, K2SO4. Is this an acid? No, it's not an acid because there is no hydrogen. NH4Cl. Is this an acid? It should start with hydrogen. It should start with hydrogen. So it's not starting with hydrogen, it's starting with nitrogen. That's why it is not an acid. HCl. Is this an acid? Yes. And H2SO4, sulfuric acid. So it's easy to identify a substance which give proton or which is having hydrogen. But in exam, if they ask define the term acid, you don't say a substance which is having hydrogen. No. What is the standard definition? And it's of 2 marks. Whenever you find a definition of acid, it's of 2 marks. 1 mark is for mentioning the term donate. This term donate will give you 1 mark. And 1 mark is for mentioning the term proton or H plus. So using these terms, you will get the 2 marks. So acids are proton donors or substance which donate proton. We simply call that as acid. Then these are some characteristic of the acid. What are the characteristic of acid or reaction of acid? Whenever acid react with metal, it will give salt and hydrogen. Metal oxide, if it react with metal oxide or metal hydroxide, it will give salt and water. That's in the beginning I said this. So acid plus metal gives salt and hydrogen. Acid plus metal oxide gives salt and water. Acid plus metal hydroxide gives salt and water. And acid plus metal carbonate gives salt, water and carbon dioxide. So now we'll complete the product for each, starting with the first reaction, the reaction of acids. Number 1, when any acid is there reacted with metal, this will result in a formation of salt plus hydrogen. So acid plus metal gives salt and hydrogen. You have to recall the reactivity series because all the metal does not react with acid. So you have to recall the reactivity series. According to reactivity series, we have potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, lead, copper, silver, copper, mercury, silver, gold and platinum. So this is a reactivity. As we go down, the reactivity decreases. So till lead, till this point, they can react with both dilute and concentrated acids. Like if we have either acid contain more water or acid contain less, because acids are aqueous solutions, so they contain some water as well. So acid contain more water or less water, any kind is there, it will react. But the below the lead, they can react with concentrated acids only. It does not react with dilute acid, it always react with concentrated acid. So first one, acid plus metal gives salt and hydrogen. So if you have calcium plus hydrochloric acid, so calcium plus hydrochloric acid, this will give salt. How to identify which salt is produced? It's easy to identify the salt produced. If it is a hydrochloric acid, it will produce chloride salt. If the acid is hydrochloric acid, this will give chloride salt. If it is nitric acid, this will give nitrate salt. And if it is sulfuric acid, this will give sulfate salt. So these are the salts which can commonly we prepare these salts. So if it's a hydrochloric acid, then it will be a chloride salt, nitric acid, nitrate salt, and sulfuric acid. This will result in a formation of sulfate. So we have calcium plus hydrochloric acid, or metal plus acid, or acid plus metal. I can change the order. It won't make difference. So first one is a metal, and the second one is acid. So metal plus acid, what will be the product? Whenever metal is mixed with acid or acid is mixed with metal, so this will be a salt plus hydrogen. So which salt will be there? The term salt means the first name contain metal, the substance which contain a metal, that's called a salt. So first name of a salt which is produced when calcium plus hydrochloric acid, the product will be calcium chloride. How we know chloride salt is produced? Because the type of the salt depends on acid. If it's a hydrochloric acid, it will result in a chloride salt. Nitric acid, nitrate salt. Sulfuric acid, sulfate salt. So calcium plus hydrochloric acid, what it gives? It will give calcium chloride plus hydrogen. So how we identify this? You can easily identify like what happened. Calcium will take position of this hydrogen. Hydrogen will be removed. So if calcium is removed, if hydrogen is removed from chloride, so it will become calcium chloride and hydrogen is left alone. Is this clear, this example? The first one, acid plus metal. Any doubt till this point? Another example. So we are doing the first characteristic, that when acid, it can be metal plus acid or acid plus metal, that does not make difference to the product. So when metal and acid are mixed together, this will form salt and hydrogen gas. So if I say magnesium plus hydrochloric acid, so magnesium is a metal, hydrochloric acid, which is an acid here, what will be the product? Magnesium plus hydrochloric acid. So the metal will take position of the hydrogen, metal will displace hydrogen. So it will produce magnesium chloride plus hydrogen. If we have calcium plus nitric acid. So calcium plus nitric acid, what will be the product? Nitric acid produce nitrate salt. Chloride, hydrochloric acid produce chloride salt. So calcium plus nitric acid, what will be the product? So it will produce calcium nitrate plus hydrogen. Hydrogen will always be there when a metal is reacting with acid. So calcium is a metal here and nitric, this is acid. So metal plus acid, what it result? It result in a formation of salt and hydrogen. So how to identify the salt? The salt will have two things. The first name of the salt contain a metal and the second name is from acid. This is always the case. So when calcium is mixed with nitric acid, so first name is coming from metal, that's why it is calcium. The second name is coming from acid. Nitric acid gives nitrate salt. Hydrochloric acid gives chloride salt. Same thing happen here. When magnesium plus hydrochloric acid, this form magnesium chloride. How magnesium chloride is formed? Because it is a salt. The first name of the salt is coming from metal and the second name of the salt is coming from acid. So if it's a hydrochloric acid, then the salt will be chloride. If it's a nitric acid, then the salt will be nitrate. And same way, if we have example aluminium plus sulfuric acid. So aluminium is mixed with sulfuric acid or aluminium plus sulfuric acid. What will be the result? So aluminium plus sulfuric acid, the result will be, because sulfuric acid is there, whenever the product should be salt and hydrogen. Yeah, that's right. So it will be, the first name is coming from metal, that is aluminium. And the second name of the salt is coming from the acid. So if it's a sulfuric acid, then it will be sulfate. And plus the product will be hydrogen. So these are always the case whenever acid react with metal. But what metals commonly react? The metals till lead, they can react with acid. Others cannot react with concentrated dilute acid. They can only react with concentrated. But in the lab, because commonly we use dilute acid, so we don't find common reactions of copper and below. What are the observations here? What we will observe or what we will see? So when metal react with acid or metal plus acid, what are the observation? What we will see? So the state of the metal, all the metals are solid at room temperature except mercury. We are mixing with acid. Acid are normally solutions are there. They are mixed with water. So state of the metal is solid. State of the acid is aqueous. Aqueous means because you don't find, like whenever you have HCl, like hydrochloric acid, nitric acid or sulfuric acid, they all are mixed with water. They are present, the water molecules are also present. So acid, you don't find very pure acid. They are always either mixed with a greater quantity of the water, we call dilute acid, and if small quantity of water, we call them as concentrated. But there is always the water molecule. Now acid plus metal, this will give salt plus hydrogen. So salts which are produced here, normally these are soluble salts or aqueous or dissolved salts are produced, and hydrogen is a gas. So what we will see, or what are the observations? We'll see when metal reacting with acid, so the solid size decreases. The solid is a metal here, and because hydrogen gas is there, so we'll see bubbles. So these are the observations when acid is reacting with metal. Like example, you have a container, a solution that is having acid. And you add a piece of metal. Metal is solid. Like this is representing a piece of metal. So moment you add the metal, when we add the metal, metal will react with acid. As a result, when metal plus acid, it will give salt. So and hydrogen gas. So what we'll observe this solid when it is reacting, its size is decreasing, and the bubbles of the hydrogen are seen around it. Is it clear? The reaction of metal with acid, the observation. So here you can see we have a zinc metal and acid. The solutions are there. So we add a piece of zinc to acid. What we'll observe, or what we'll see, you can see the bubbles are there, a bubbles released. So what are these bubbles? These bubbles are actually hydrogen gas. So the metal, and with the passage of the time, we'll see the size of the metal will reduce. So whenever acid is reacting with metal, it will produce salt and hydrogen. Is it clear, the observation? So sometime in exam they ask state the observation when acid is mixed with metal. Sometime you have to complete the equation. So how you'll complete the equation? The first name of the salt is coming from the metal, and the second name is coming from acid. Now more examples related to completing the equation. If I say I have potassium is mixed with nitric acid. So potassium plus nitric acid. What will be the result? What will be the product? A metal is mixed with acid. A metal mixed with acid, or metal is mixed with acid. What will the product? The product should be salt and hydrogen. Yeah, that's right. So the product will be potassium nitrate plus hydrogen. So this is a product formed when acid is reacting with the potassium metal is reacting with nitric acid. Another example, if we have sodium plus hydrochloric acid. So what will be the product when sodium is reacting with hydrochloric acid? Sodium is a metal here, and hydrochloric, this is acid. The product will be So sodium plus hydrochloric acid. The first name is from metal, the salt name, and the second part is from acid. Hydrochloric acid gives chloride salt, sulfuric acid gives sulfate salt, and nitric acid gives nitrate salt. So it will be sodium chloride plus hydrogen. So this will always be a product whenever acid is reacting with metal. And what are the observation? So what we'll see when this reaction occurs, any kind of metal react with acid, if there is a reaction, we'll see a solid size decreases, that is a metal. And we'll see bubbles. And what are these bubbles? Basically, these are the, but in observation, you don't say bubbles of hydrogen, you just mention what you observe or what you see. So there will be a solid size decrease and the bubbles will form. Is it clear? Any doubt till this point? So this is the first characteristic of acid, that acid, whenever we have acid react with metal, this will always result in a formation of salt and hydrogen.